Okay, brilliant. No problem. Thank you so much, Jessica. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Over the next hour or so, I'm going to show you 3 vital steps to move from chaos to clarity and help your AI become not just a tool, but a true co-pilot. Pun fully intended there, so buckle up for those. So let me start off with a story from right here in Sweden. Last year, Klarna, one of the world's biggest fintech companies, decided to go all in on AI. They cut around 700 jobs, put AI in charge of customer service, and announced that it would be doing the work of hundreds of people. On paper, the numbers looked amazing, fantastic. Millions were being saved, thousands of tasks were being automated. But here's the catch. AI doesn't know what's helpful and what's harmful unless you teach it. It will happily read through your holiday calendar from 2016, that awkward email draft that you never sent, and that HR policy that was quietly retired during COVID. And then, with the confidence that only an AI can muster, it can blurt something wildly inappropriate out in front of your customers, and that's exactly what happened at Klarna. AI nailed all of the simple stuff. But when it came to a bit more nuanced things like refunds, exceptions, human empathy, it crumbled. The service quality dropped, customers got frustrated, and Klarna had to backtrack, bring humans back into the loop. Now, I don't share this story to say that AI doesn't work. It does incredibly well. We use it every day here. But if you rush in without clean data, without good guardrails in place, and without a clear plan for where humans fit in, you're building a skyscraper on sand. And as anyone with a fundamental understanding of engineering will tell you, not the best idea. So the lesson here is teaching AI what not to care about is just as important as feeding it the right data. And that's where human judgment comes in. If we get that balance right, AI becomes a powerful tool. If you get it wrong, you can end up in the headlines. So, my name is Joakim, and I help some of the world's largest organizations in the Nordics get ready for AI. Not just technically, but operationally and culturally also. And what I've learned over the past few years is that technology is rarely the real problem. It's often everything that goes around it and in it. The data, the governance, ownership, change management, these types of things. So with this in mind, today we'll be exploring how to prepare your data so that AI has the right building blocks, secure it so that AI doesn't cause unintentional damage, optimize it so that AI and your teams keep on getting smarter and more relevant over time. And I promise this isn't going to be more theory. Today we're going to be focusing on what you can do now in your own organizations to make AI really work for you. AI doesn't fail because it lacks data. It tends to fail because we haven't taught it what matters. And that's really going to be at the heart of today's conversation. So, quick disclaimer. This isn't my recording. It's actually from a colleague of mine, Dux Raymond Size. Some of you may know him, but he's a self-confessed tech nerd, long-term Microsoft MVP. And anytime he gets his hands on a new piece of technology, he tends to record his experience just to see what happens. A little bit eccentric, yeah, well, perhaps. But here is a good example of what he found where Copilot surfaced some problematic material, let's call it. So in this clip, he simply asks, hey, Copilot, list all of the files that I have access to which contain the word password in it. So I wonder what it's going to show. Obviously, it has a bit of a think, and then it starts immediately by showing the stuff that he has access to. So the first thing that it shows here is an Excel file filled with all of his passwords. I'm assuming that everyone here has an Excel file filled with passwords, right? No? Okay, just some of us then perhaps. But then what we start to see underneath that are things that he didn't necessarily know he had access to. Okay, wow, what is this? 8 other files, 1, 2, 3, 8 other files that have passwords somewhere embedded in them. No one, and I mean no one, can resist clicking on a file named passwords owned by someone else or that they know has passwords in it. I think it's just human nature. So Copilot isn't good then. It has access to things that it shouldn't. Why is this happening? Well, it's not that Copilot isn't good. it's happening because it relies on something called Microsoft Graph. You see, Microsoft creates value by connecting large language models to your organizational data. And Copilot accesses this content and context through Microsoft Graph. And with those, it can generate responses based on your organizational data. The data sources can include things like user documents stored in SharePoint, stored in OneDrive, calendars, chats, meetings, the list goes on. But Copilot combines this content with the user's working context. And you can think of that as things like the meeting that the user is in right now, or an email exchange that that user has had on the same topic, or a chat conversation they've had earlier during the week. So Copilot takes this combination of content, context, and blends it together to provide accurate, relevant, and contextual responses. So you can see why this can be problematic, right? Because AI accessing things and doing things that it definitely shouldn't do, it's not ideal, especially when we're talking about large organizations opening themselves up to risk. And when you have a tool that goes so far beyond what a regular person can do, you also need systems in place that go beyond what standard security and governance frameworks historically have looked like. But look, you don't need to take my word for it. Even Microsoft themselves are going out there and telling everybody to go build your data security business because that's where the future is, and that's what the industry needs. And they're not alone, right? Gartner is saying Copilot rollout is being slowed down, and whilst AI is certainly here to stay, it's coming with a lot of problems. The potential for Copilot is huge, potentially even limitless. But for many organizations, the reality can feel a little bit underwhelming. We see the same reoccurring challenges, things like data quality problems with ROT data getting pulled in. ROT data, for those of you not familiar with the acronym, ROT stands for redundant, obsolete, trivial data, ROT. So we see data problems with all of this redundant, obsolete, trivial data coming in. We see security oversharing, where sensitive files are being exposed to the wrong people. We see compliance gaps, where AI is surfacing things that it shouldn't. And that leads to distrust, where one wrong output and sometimes employees stop using it completely or move to a different model. Like they stop using Copilot, start using ChatGPT because they didn't like how one response looked. The hardest one of all to tackle is proving a return on investment, especially when budgets are under pressure, which is unfortunately the case for many organizations today. But here's the reality check. 94% of all AI deployments fail to make it past the pilot stage. Now, this isn't because AI isn't capable. It is. It is capable. But it's because we give it the wrong foundation. Again, it's like building a skyscraper on sand. And that's what happens when you roll out AI without thinking about governance first. So I'd like to quickly get a quick feel for the room and check where everyone is on their own personal journey. So can I please ask you guys all to scan the QR code and let me know if you've already begun rolling out Copilot. And then as a follow-up question, let us know if your organization was 100% ready for it. There is no shame here. This is a safe place. We all want to move fast, but readiness, that part tends to get skipped. So I'm going to quickly pause and look at what people are submitting. It's all anonymized as well, by the way, so there's no need to be shy. Okay, well, what we see here, according to the results, 88% of people have already begun a Copilot rollout. But 75% of you felt that your organization was not entirely ready. That tends to track with what we see on a daily basis also. We all have an AI dream, right? And that is faster decisions, better insights, more efficiency. But the data reality is often a lot messier. In most organizations, this is what we tend to see. We see oversharing of sensitive content. We see IT teams struggling to scale AI securely. We see data quality issues with ROT data everywhere. And we see unclear or unproven ROIs. And These issues aren't just technical, they are cultural and they're procedural also. And if there's no clear ownership of the data and there are no rules for lifecycle and no context for your AI, then the AI will simply reflect all of that chaos straight back at you, just a lot louder and a lot faster. And this is why our focus today isn't just on clean your data. This is something that people have heard for many years, time and time again. It's about curating your AI's world so that it reflects how you want the business to think and act. As my dad always used to tell me, do as I say, not as I do. So it's a bit of a similar concept that we're working with here. So here's a quick example of how that can look if you don't take these issues seriously. At a large company, a large customer of mine, who I will keep anonymous to protect the traumatized, Copilot had recently been rolled out across the entire business. The excitement levels were high. People were testing its capabilities. They were asking it questions, getting summaries. They were really feeling the future. That was until one employee typed a very perfectly innocent prompt. It went something like, what changes am I going to see in my team this year? Now, Copilot, as helpful as ever, scoured the connected environment and proudly responded with a summary of an old restructuring document, one which was from several years ago, long since forgotten and never really meant to see the light of day again. But the response that it gave was something along the lines of, Team XYZ will be merged with Team ABC, several roles are at risk, and the timeline is Q4. You can imagine the person's response after reading this. Oh shit, sugar. Cue the confusion, panic, the frantic Slack messages. Did you see what Copilot has said? Is it true? Why hasn't leadership told us any of this? Within just a couple of hours, the rumor mill was on fire. People were calling their managers. Some were updating their CVs. One poor guy even booked in a meeting with HR. Now, that must have been a super awkward meeting for everyone. And all of it, every bit, was caused by AI regurgitating a ghost of a document which should have been buried years ago. Now, was Copilot being malicious? Of course not. It was doing exactly what it was asked. The problem was, however, that no one ever told it, hey, you know what, maybe don't look at that, don't read that. And that's the risk, because AI doesn't know the difference between useful and sensitive, or current and catastrophically outdated. But you do, and your organizations do. And that's why governance cannot just be an afterthought. Because in this case, all it took was one question, one old file, and the trust in the tool was broken before it ever really got off the ground. So unknown unknowns aren't just surprises, they are complete credibility killers. And this is why governance isn't just an IT task, it's really an organizational responsibility. So let's talk quickly about the tightrope that we are now all walking along. On the one side, you've got security, compliance, governance, and on the other side, you've got innovation, productivity, and the relentless business pressure to go faster. You could lean one side and lock everything down so tightly that no one ever makes any mistakes. But then again, if you do this, then no one will make any progress either. You could swing the other way and open up the floodgates and let the AI roam free, which, let's face it, is a fast-track way to get on the front pages of newspapers and not in a good way. And so what we see is that IT teams find themselves stuck in the middle, trying to balance the demand for transformation with the realities of legacy systems. We see things like limited budgets with unclear use cases, poor results and distrust being built up, and the ever-growing regulatory pressure. Pick your poison. There's GDPR, NIS2, DORA. You can add your own industry flavor of acronym soup, and all of a sudden you're frozen, right? How can anyone move forward when one wrong move could land you in a breach, get you a big fine, and a complete loss of trust? And It gets worse. You're also expected to prove a return on investment on your Microsoft 365 investment. And let's be honest here, and completely open, Microsoft 365 isn't cheap. It's here to boost productivity. But if you lock it down too much, then you're really strangling the very value which you're paying for. In the meantime, leadership constantly want answers. How much money are we saving? Are people really using Copilot? Can we prove that it's delivering an impact? Sometimes this can be really hard to tell, because even though AI can be incredible, it's surprisingly easy to spin up a chatbot that just sort of flails. And if the data is bad, then the answers are going to be bad. And if the experience is clunky, then the adoption is going to tank. And if you don't plan for impact, then you're not going to get any. But here's the good news. This isn't about choosing sides. You'd be a pretty bad trapeze artist or a tightrope walker if you only went on one side. It's about finding balance. It's about protecting your data without smothering innovation. It's about delivering a return on investment without compromising trust. And it's about empowering users without overwhelming IT's resources. Because when we strike that balance, what we see is we streamline operations, we unlock new insights, we boost engagement, and we get that competitive edge that everyone is so desperate to get. And if you think about it, this is exactly what leaders do with people. We bring them in, we train them, we give them boundaries, we let them operate within those boundaries to achieve their goals. And so AI needs the same leadership that we give people. And this is where the three phases come in, those being prepare, optimize, and secure. So let's take a deep breath here, because this next part is really important. We've talked a lot about the issues, or I've talked a lot about the issues today. So now let's look at some of the solutions and the way that we can get out of this predicament that we sometimes find ourselves in. You don't need to be perfect. In fact, chasing perfection will slow you down more than anything else. The goal here is progress, not paralysis. Or as the old saying goes, perfect is the enemy of good. What you do need is a plan. You need a rhythm, a way to go from the chaos to clarity without grinding your organization to a complete halt. And it starts with these three simple but very powerful phases. So phase one, prepare. The first step that you need to do is to give your AI your judgment. You need to prepare, to give your judgment is to prepare your data environment. Now, preparation is about making deliberate choices on what AI should know and what it should really ignore. Think of it like this. Think of it like onboarding a new senior hire, right? You wouldn't get 20 years worth of archive material, slam it on their desk, and just go tell them to figure it out, right? No, of course not. That's not the way that you do things. You curate the context that they need to be able to succeed in their role. So that's step one. Step two is secure. Once you've decided what your AI should know, you have to make sure that it doesn't accidentally share things with the wrong people. And again, this is where your judgment becomes all about boundaries. AI is like flowing water, right? It will flow wherever it is allowed to. That is, unless you put very clear channels to guide it to. The third, last but certainly not least, is optimize. Preparation and security give AI the right foundation, but optimization makes sure that it keeps on learning and it keeps the right lessons over time. So this is about monitoring, refining, and scaling your AI so that it gets sharper, not just busier. So let's take a look at each of these steps in a bit more detail, and I'm going to show you in each of these cases how you can be doing this within your own organization. So when you bring AI into your organization, you don't want to drag all of your digital baggage with you into new era. And this is where that rot data comes in, the redundant, obsolete, trivial data. This is where that can become your worst enemy. So this is the formula which I tend to give our clients. First, remove anything with no business or legal value. Reduce versions and duplicates, and restructure the important stuff so that AI can use it and find it effectively. Here's a quick example to bring home the point of why it's needed. A manufacturing client that we have reduced their Copilot hallucination rate by over 60% just by archiving documents that were 10 years old or older. So by archiving 10-year-old obsolete product specs, the AI literally stopped recommending parts that were discontinued years ago almost overnight. And I'd like you all to kind of think about your own environment for a second. If you were to switch on AI tomorrow, what's one category or one group of files that you absolutely wouldn't want it to see? Now, at this point, some of you might be thinking to yourself, aha, Joakim, you old dog, you've got it completely wrong. And actually, my organization needs to keep everything for a minimum of 10 years for legal and regulatory reasons. Okay, fair enough. But let's be clear. Those legal exceptions, they're just that. They're exceptions. You can and should make room for retention rules where they're needed. But the rest, the outdated draft from years ago, the forgotten duplicates, the 57 versions of the same PowerPoint, that's all just clutter. And if you don't have a policy, a real enforced policy for cleaning up these things, for cleaning up everything else, then you're setting yourself up for a lot of cost, a lot of risk, and a lot of confusion. So we migrate what matters, we archive what's useful, and we delete what's just noise. Why do we do this? Well, because Copilot is expensive, and data is too. Every gigabyte that we keep costs money. And if it's irrelevant, then it's not only costing you money, but it's also costing you accuracy. So how does this actually look in practice then? Well, there are lots of tools out there to help you with this type of thing. You can pick whichever one you want. But this is how I personally do it within our organization here in Sweden. This is a tool called Opus. Why do we use Opus? Well, mostly because it has a scanning and discovery tool that is integrated into it. So with its scanning and discovery tool, you can find the rot and the inactive data. So why is that so important? Well, most organizations know that they have a lot of junk lying around somewhere, but they don't exactly know where it is and how to find it without lots of manual and really time-consuming, boring work. So with Opus, you can add rules to help identify how your business defines what inactive data or what rot data looks like. You can either choose from hundreds of pre-built templates or add your own in a rule builder. And as your business continues to grow and get more and more sophisticated in what you deem as being valuable or not, you need to continue to add rules to help identify how you define these inactive and rot data files. So once you've done a scan and you know exactly what's there, then you need to be able to view it and take action from it. And this is where stuff starts to get really interesting, because this is where you get an overview of the results of the scan. So here we can see stuff like the total volume of data that has been scanned, how much of the data are versions of the same file, how many legacy and video and picture files there are, etc. Now, typically, what we see when we scan environments is that anything between 25 up to 45% can be removed or archived. Now, I'll say that again because I think it's really, really significant. Up to 45% of the files can be removed or archived. In extreme cases, I've even seen it go as high as 50% could be removed. What that means in a real world dollar value is if you're paying, let's say, $100,000 a year, to make my math simple, for your SharePoint storage, then you can reduce that by almost half, by $50,000 or $45,000 per year. And with most enterprise organizations, where there's a lot of product-focused marketing, there are typically going to be loads of versions of large sized files which can be removed. Think things like old marketing material, or one video that might have hundreds of different versions on it, and they can all be removed or put into storage. So from this screen, you're able to take action. And I tend to personally think about this as doing a bit of spring cleaning in your house. If you've got loads of stuff lying around, it's taking up space in your expensive, highly sought after living space, like your living room, or in this case, in SharePoint space. And so once in a while, you're going to want to box up certain items, put them in your garage where it's not going to clutter your living space so much, and people and AIs aren't going to go tripping over them. In this analogy, the garage is the archiving or backup space that you might have. So all of this sounds good, right? It's all pretty basic concepts. But of course, people being people, no one ever really wants to throw anything away. I have this same discussion with my wife often. Sometimes it's her, sometimes it's me, just don't want to let go of certain items. And this can make it feel like a never-ending tug of war between admins and end users. Everyone wants things to go faster and for things to be easier, but actually very few people want to risk doing that at their own expense. So we need to go back to this idea of the tightrope walker. There needs to be a balance between keeping things safe and efficient and keeping the business moving without big issues. So with the tool that we use, Opus, we can archive this. We can archive and we can achieve this balance by leaving what's called a stub file in place of each file. So this is what we see on the screen here. Here we have drone footage house 11.mp4. This was an MP4 file, but now you see that it says .html at the end. To the end user, they come, it looks like the file is still there. Most people don't even notice that it says .html at the end. And so this allows admins to remove files and build retention policies without risk. How? Well, when that end user comes back to the file, which they haven't used in years, they'll find this stub file in its place. And without the need to involve an admin, they can restore this file to this location or to another completely separate location. And this is one of the things which makes the archiving process so effective. Data can be restored in a very granular file level without any need for extra costs or IT involvement. So you don't pay extra to restore it, and you don't need to get IT involved each and every time. Okay, step 2, secure. Now, this is where the real horror stories start to appear, because what's the fastest way to turn an AI or Copilot from really helpful to being really harmful? Well, it's to let it have access to everything. And I mean everything. That old HR spreadsheet with salary bands shared with everyone except external. That project roadmap titled AI 2027 version 4 final no really final this time final. Let's be real. We've all named files like this at least once or twice before. But AI doesn't know whether or not this is actually the final version of the file. And frankly, it doesn't care. It'll find it and it will surface it to the wrong person and often at the wrong time. So phase 2 is all about plugging those holes. We start off by identifying overshared content, fixing broken permission inheritance, and reducing insider risk. And then we take it a step further, applying automated policies so that you don't have to rely on one-time cleanups or heroic manual reviews every quarter. We also define clear exceptions for legitimate business needs, because we're not trying to stop the business, we're trying to protect it. And if there's one thing I can say here, it's just automate these processes, right? I wouldn't wish doing these manual reviews and cleanups every quarter on my worst enemy. It's just really, one loses the will to live by doing it. So the goal here is really bigger than just security. It's about building a defensible position for audits, for compliance reviews, and let's be honest, it's also about sleeping a little bit better at night. Because if everyone has access to something, then no one has access to it. So again, let's take a look at what that can look like. The tool that we use here is called Insights, but again, there are plenty out there. And as the name suggests, Insights uncovers insights about what files are risky and who they are being shared with. So you can view stats and trends on key contributing factors, such as external user activity, external link sharing, and sensitive items. Once you've seen and understood that, you can review recent statistics and activity for your external users and external user access. You can then audit those users who have recently signed in within the past 90 days or so. And once you've been able to do that, you can really quickly identify high-risk activities, including people who have direct access to file sharing and external links with the highest permissions in your environment. So you get a very clear overview quickly. The idea here is to provide your admins with a single pane of glass to give your team a high-level overview of the reality of the situation. So here we can see the file name and file type. We can see the risk level, sensitivity level, exposure level, and once you find something that you really want to drill down into, you can then click here to find out more. Or if you're already convinced and you need to take action, you can do so in the bottom left-hand corner here. From here, you can set immediate rules, such as pause this person's access or fully remove their access. Or in most cases, you're just going to want to reach out to them, take contact with the file owner and ask them for a bit more context as to why they've just shared the company M&A with 10,000 external users. Hopefully no one will do that. Now, in theory, securing your data sounds straightforward, but in practice, without the right tools, this is often what it can look like. So these are all real-world examples that I've seen inside of real organizations that we work with. So let's start here. The site privacy is set to public, which means that anyone in an organization can access it, not just the intended team, but everyone. It's like putting confidential folder in the middle of the canteen and just hoping that no one reads it. The second one that we've got is we've got default sharing link. So people within the organization can edit. I just want you to think about how easy it is to click send without thinking twice. And all of a sudden, you've sent it to someone who can edit it and make changes and break things. Now, when you combine this with broken permission inheritance, where someone's made a manual exception, suddenly all of the structure becomes really, really unpredictable. You can no longer trust that the settings at the top are protecting anything underneath. And then there's everybody's favorite, share with everyone except for external users. Sounds safe, right? How bad can that be? But actually, it's a giant group of people that includes nearly everyone internally, or pretty much everyone internally. It's overkill, and it's misused more often than it's not. And finally, no sensitivity label. If you have no sensitivity label, then there's no way to distinguish between the Friday lunch menu and your company's M&A file. And if you're using a tool like Copilot, it's pulling from all of this indiscriminately. So whilst phase 2 is all about securing your environment, it's important to realize that oversharing isn't always intentional. It's more often than not systemic. It's built into the defaults. And this is why security can't just be a top-down approach. We need clarity, automation, and shared responsibility to be able to really do things correctly. Okay, final step, step 3. So we've cleared out the junk. We've locked all of the doors. Now comes the fun part, and that is turning the house into a smart home. So in this phase, in Optimize, is where we go from being really reactive to proactive. We go from firefighting issues to really fine-tuning the performance. Because governance doesn't need to be a manual review loop. With the right tools and the right automation, it can run quietly in the background like any good IT system should. And here's the real secret. Your people, although sometimes they're your biggest headache, yes, but they are also your biggest and best defense and your biggest enablers. The people who create the content in your organization, the people who use it, who understand it, who live and breathe it, When we give them visibility and tools, we shift governance from being a blocker into being a shared responsibility. We empower your data owners, and suddenly you're not chasing problems anymore. You're building a culture. And then one where the content is labeled, it's secured, and cleaned up even before IT ever need to get involved. And then we layer in monitoring, because if you're rolling out Copilot, let's be honest, most of us are. We know that from the survey at the beginning, or at least soon will be. It's not enough just to switch it on. We need to know that it's working. We need to know that it's delivering value. We need to know that the prompts are really, really hitting the mark. And we need to know that people aren't just enabled, but they're being effective with it. So how do we measure that? Well, there are lots of third-party tools that can help. We use one called tyGraph, but I'll let you do your own research there with what might work best for you. But what you need is a tool that can give you visibility into things like adoption trends, into things like you need a tool that can let you benchmark prompt effectiveness. And crucially, you need something that's going to be able to close that feedback loop. And when you do that successfully, you're able to justify investment with more than just anecdotal evidence. You're able to go to your senior leadership and say, we need this because we can demonstrate it's going to achieve X, Y, Z. You can do it with up-to-date and measurable outcomes. So this way, it isn't just going to attract top-down investment, but you're also going to be building bottom-up interest from your teams. So this is how we move from guesswork to insights, from rollout to actually seeing real results. You need to go further by helping to identify who are the common user groups, who are the ideal user personas based on real data like departments, roles, activity patterns, and you also need use cases. And once you get those benchmarks, that's a real game changer, especially for executive sponsors, because then you can track progress in a meaningful way. Another option, which executives tend to love, is to use anonymized data from organizations of a similar size and sector to show how other companies are actually doing it. It's a bit like looking over and copying your classmates' homework, right? This means that you can compare and contrast how you're doing compared to your competitors within the industry. And that's the kind of intelligence that helps you course correct early and scale what's actually really working well. And once you've got that clarity, you continue to fine tune, you continue to evolve. We don't just want to keep the lights on, we want to build on the success that we're seeing. So we continue to refine user groups, personas, use cases. We learn what's working, we learn where there are gaps, and how to take things further. So again, let's take a look at how that can look in practice. This is the tool called tyGraph. It provides deep insights into user adoption, collaboration patterns, productivity trends, everything that you need to continue to optimize and evolve. And at a glance, you can see how often people use tools like M365 and Copilot. You can see what percentage of users are using it. You can see when they've been using it and filter accordingly. And from here, you can also see users who are licensed and where they are using Copilot most frequently. So these users are making a good use of Copilot with the word and team functionality, but they're sort of leaving everything else out. What can that mean? Well, either you might be time for a quick course correction or a quick knowledge boost to make sure that they understand how to use these other parts of the system. Or if it's just really not interesting to them, maybe it's time to downgrade them and save a bit of cost and bring their license level down. Armed with this information, you can make those decisions easily without upsetting the boat. When we use terms like adoption, by the way, what we really mean is how much interaction users have with Copilot overall. So that's not just the number of logins per month. It also takes into account how many days per week Copilot is being used. How much time during the day? How many apps are they being used, etc. And we're then able to compare Copilot interactions to current or existing Microsoft 365 activity levels to discern where the transformative behaviors are in strong adopters, and how you can spread these behaviors to other users. A great example is here. Here we can see that 17% of the licenses are not assigned. That's about $1,500 lost per month, or about $18,000 lost per year needlessly. You can also see who the high probability adopters are. So of all of the people that don't yet have a Copilot licenses, who are the ones who are actually going to use it? And at the bottom here, you can see the single blocked users who have a paid for Copilot license, but aren't utilizing it due to Entra ID being disabled. But the high probability 89 users that we're showing here, this is an ordered list based off of the top 5% of Microsoft 365 usage across all of the other tools. So you're able to use these metrics to not only save yourself money, but also build adoption programs and take direct action to move licenses to where they're going to be most needed. So to begin to round things off now, then, if your AI is an engine, then your data is the fuel. And if the fuel is clean, the engine is going to continue to run smoothly. If it is really dirty, then you're going to get breakdowns, you're going to get misfires and have expensive big repair bills. And that's why I say data health is AI health. And health isn't just about having clean data. We know that we need clean data, but it's also about having relevant, accurate, and up-to-date and safe-to-use data. Think about it like this. You wouldn't drink water from a rusty tap, yet many organizations let their AI drink from a rusty tap of outdated, overshared, unclassified content. And the better your data health, the more your AI reflects your judgment, and the more trust your employees will have in it. So take action after this session. If this has been interesting, go back and ask yourself and ask your leadership team these 6 questions. What data is relevant for AI? If it's not relevant, then it's just noise. Get rid of it. Who can see what? And does AI know the difference? Do we have an AI governance plan, or are we just sort of hoping for the best? And do we have a specific use case for each user or each persona? Because generic AI produces generic results that aren't really going to move the needle. So these questions, they're not just a checklist, right? They should be the backbone, the foundation of teaching your AI your judgment. We need to give it the right foundation. It can't be built on sand. And AI is only ever going to be as good as the data it's trained on and the governance that shapes it. But the good news here is that when we get this right, the payoffs are incredible. This is what it unlocks. Trustworthy AI outputs, so that's no more hallucinations, no more wild guesses, just relevant, helpful responses grounded in the right data. Suddenly your AI becomes your teammate, one that you can actually rely on rather than constantly having to double check and babysit. Reduced risk. No more worrying about if Copilot is going to dig up confidential merge documents from 2017. Governance gives you the guardrails that you need so that you're not just sort of crossing your fingers and hoping that no one types in a prompt that's going to cause catastrophe. Better compliance, GDPR, NIS2, DORA, the alphabet soup of regulation becomes all of a sudden manageable, where you know exactly where all of your sensitive content lives, who has access to it, and for how long it's going to stick around. You get happier, more efficient users. People find what they need. They stop wasting time in messy SharePoint folders, hunting for old templates. And yes, last but certainly not least, fast ROI, because when you reduce the storage footprint, you improve accuracy, you avoid regulatory fire drills, that Copilot license starts to pay for itself very quickly. And that's the vision, right? That's the real AI transformation. It's not just about deploying a tool, but it's about unlocking value safely with confidence. So if we go back to that question at the beginning of, are you ready for AI? The answers don't come from a dashboard or a press release. It comes from the state of your data. And the good news again here is that you get to control that part. So if there is one thing that I want you to remember from today, it's this. AI needs more than just access to your clean data. It needs your judgment. And you can give it that by preparing, securing, optimizing your data. And if you don't ask questions of your data now, then I'm sorry, AI will ask those questions for you later, and you might not always like the answers. So start small, pick one use case, clean the data that it needs, secure it, and optimize it as you go. And you can then sit back and watch as AI stops being a chaotic mess and starts becoming a trusted advisor for your business. Okay, I think I've done more than enough talking for today. This whole AI Native Workplace Summit is a community-run event. It exists because people like us are sharing, learning, figuring this stuff out together. So let's lean into that spirit. I'd love to hear from you, any challenges that you're facing in your AI journey. So if anyone has any thoughts or questions, please go ahead, let me know. Otherwise, I will share my contact details and my LinkedIn here. But before I move on to that, thanks very much for being part of my session. If anything that I've said has sparked a thought or felt relevant to what you're navigating, I'd really recommend taking a look at this white paper on the AvePoint website. It's not a sales pitch. It's simply the next place that I would suggest looking if you're asking yourself, where do I start? Where do we go from here? Because it dives deeper into what we've been discussing, into what good looks like when it comes to AI. So if you have any questions, I'll take them now. Otherwise, feel free to add me on LinkedIn if we haven't already connected, and happy to deal with all of your thoughts, questions, concerns there.
Thank you so much, Joakim. That was really insightful and really easy to follow along with all the tangible examples.
Thank you. Yeah, please do you think so? And yeah, there's a last slide here. Please go ahead and rate the session if you thought it was helpful. Please do let me know, and look forward to hopefully seeing you guys all next year, if not before, in some other way, shape, or form. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I had a quick question.
Yeah,
myself.
Please go ahead.
I posted it, and maybe I missed that detail, but can you help me go back to the archive possibility of archiving non-relevant content and then enabling the user to restore it on their own accord?
Yeah.
Is that a product from AvePoint, or?
Yeah, so there are plenty of products out there that does this. AvePoint have one, which of course I think is pretty great. But yeah, so this tool that I was showing here is one called Opus. And as I mentioned, the handy thing about it is it helps you find where all of that content is, so you don't need to do this manual look. And then you can take action knowing that, well, if someone comes back and says, where is that Excel file that I haven't touched in 3 years? They can restore it without having to pay extra or without having to get IT involved.
And my follow-up question to that sounds very interesting, is where is that archived? Is it still in the cloud, or did it go somewhere else? Or because then we might also be able to save some of the SharePoint storage that we want to save.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can choose, it's dealer's choice. You can archive it on premise somewhere, and we can help you move that to a cheaper place. Or you can archive it on the cloud. You can do it in your own Azure environment, or you can choose to archive it with a third party like AvePoint or someone else.
Okay, that's cool. So I can select where my archive goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Doing that.
Okay, well, I think that's pretty much all we have time for today. So again, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for the questions and your attention. And yeah, please do let's connect, add me on LinkedIn, and we can pick up discussions there. But for now, have a good evening and enjoy the rest of the AI Native Workplace Summit. Take care all.